In today's episode of the Artists of Folklore and Fairy, we are going to look at the life of one of the most inspirational, but also one of the more controversial of these artists. This is a dark story, because as well as the beauty, there was also the beast. In this episode, we will be looking at the art and the tragic life of Richard Dadd. Now, there is no denying the brilliance of Richard Dadd. As professional artists ourselves, we know so many other artists who will instantly cite Dadd as one of their favourite inspirations, and both of us as well, and this admiration of his brilliance is tinged with a knowing, slight wince and sadness at what happened in his life. It is tragic, and not just for himself, but for many in his family who had to live with the legacy of the actions of this madness. Because yes, the wonderful artist Richard Dadd, who inspires artists, fairy artists to this day, and musicians and writers and filmmakers from all over the world, he was clinically insane. On the 1st of August 1817, Dadd was born into this world at Chatham in Kent in England. His father Robert was a chemist, and his mother Mary Ann was the daughter of a shipwright. During his schooling at King's School in Rochester, it became evident that young Richard was extremely talented at art, and on applying for entry into the Royal Academy of Arts at age 20, he gained instant admission. In 1840, he won the Medal for Life drawing. Among his friends and colleagues, there was William Powell Frith, Augustus Egg, Henry O'Neill, and with these people a group was formed, and this was called the Clique. Even among these young artists, he was considered the most talented by all of them. Alongside his training at the Royal Academy, he also took lessons at William Dadson's Academy of Art. In July 1842, a truly wonderful opportunity came Richard's way. He was invited by Sir Thomas Phillips, who had been one of the mayors of Newport, to travel with him on an expedition across Europe to Greece, on to Turkey, southern Syria and ending in Egypt. For this group of travellers, he would be the official draftsman, illustrating the travels and wonders that they would come across. By November, they reached southern Syria, and times had become much more difficult. From here, they travelled to Jerusalem and Jordan, and returned, crossing over the Engadi wilderness. And it was during this time that the group began to notice that Dadd's personality was changing. It was December. Their expedition was taking them up the Nile, travelling by boat, when suddenly Dadd's character became extremely violent, and his head was full of delusions and paranoia, and he began to believe he was being possessed by the Egyptian god Osiris. Not knowing what had brought this medical emergency on, the group could only presume that perhaps he had become badly affected by the extreme heat and possibly sunstroke, and with this he received as much medical help as possible. By 1843, in the spring, he was finally back in England, but mentally he was worsening badly. His family had him examined and he was pronounced not of sound mind. Altogether, they took him to rest in the peaceful surroundings of the Kent countryside to the village of Cobham. By midsummer, August, Richard was so much worse with his paranoia, and in his delusions his father was really the devil, masquerading and possessed. Taking up a knife, he attacked his father and stabbed him, taking his life. Now Richard Dadd decided to flee to France, attacking a fellow passenger with a razor en route. Thankfully, the police overpowered him and wrestled the knife away. He was arrested, and Dadd confessed now that he had killed his own father back in England. On his return, he was committed to the criminal department of Bethlehem Psychiatric Hospital, what became known by the more colloquial name of Bedlam. At Bedlam, and then at a further new specialist mental hospital, Broadmoor, Dadd was cared for pretty well and with much kindness. The doctors, William Wood, William Orange and Sir Charles Hood, were proponents of a more enlightened and more modern way of treating mental illness, and they knew that encouraging him to carry on with his art would be a comfort. Richard was not the only member of his family with severe mental illness. 2 other siblings had been diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, and a third had a private nurse, the reason of which is not known. And so in hospital, Richard Dad found a safety and a refuge, a place where his paranoia could be treated and he could live safely. In the Scottish National Portrait Gallery can be found a portrait from during this hospitalisation of one of his doctors, Alexander Morrison. Also during this time he painted some of his most famous images, landscapes filled with strange figures and Bosch-like creatures, and these included the Fairy Fellows masterstroke, which he had worked on between 1855 and 1864, and Contradiction, Oberon and Titania. The famous London Society photographer Henry Herrig photographed Dad at work during this time. The 1850s was a very productive time for Richard. There were 33 watercolours, sketches to illustrate the Passions were completed, a series which included the subjects of love and grief and jealousy and sorrow. In a darker turn, this collection also includes murder and agony-raving madness. As with his other paintings, the detail in these is extreme, minute and otherworldly. In later years, he added to these reflective and strange fairy works, painting landscapes and scenes of ships, many of these with a more muted and ethereal palette and atmosphere, and all from a memory of a time when he was out of the hospital. Dad spent 20 years hospitalised at Bedlam, being moved after this to the purpose-built, high-security mental hospital of Broadmoor. Family visits were few and infrequent, and I cannot imagine the anguish of his family members visiting him here among so many dangerous people, torn between knowing Richard was your sibling and yet knowing also that he had the potential to be extremely dangerous. In the winter of 1886, on the 7th of January, Richard Dad passed away. The records tell that he passed from extensive disease of the lungs, and paintings by this insane genius, are still hung at Broadmoor Hospital to this day. In 1897, on the British television version of the Antiques Roadshow, the art expert Peter Nahum made a most remarkable discovery. One of the visitors had brought in a watercolour. The Artist's Halt in the Desert, it was called, and on further inspection it was found to be one of the Richard Dad paintings from the time of his hospitalisation, and based on sketches and memories of that long, long ago expedition. In this painting is Dad himself off to one side, and the rest of the travellers at camp by the Red Sea. The owner sold it to the British Museum for £100,000 sterling. And yet his art lives on in the inspiration he gives to others. Everything. Songs by Queen's Freddie Mercury, Angela Carter, radio play Come Unto These Yellow Sands, and Terry Pratchett using the Fairy Fellows masterstroke in the novel The Wee Free Men, and a veiled compassionate sketch written of Dad's struggle with mental illness. And among our own art friends and colleagues, we know of so many who hold Dad's work in esteem, and especially his fairy works, of course.